Hi everyone, I'm Alex Wong, the creator of the Story of Community, and welcome to the Epilogue. Every Wednesday for the next 6 weeks, I'll be chatting with some of my fellow community podcasters about their experience as longtime community fans, which I, as someone who first watched the show in 2019, am not. So here with me this week is our panel for the even-numbered episodes.
Matt from Communities.
And I am Adam from Apartment 303.
And we already met Adam last week, but we had some last-minute reshuffling, so that is why some of my announcements at the end may be inaccurate, but that's okay. I'm glad to have both of you here, and today we're talking about episode 2, 2010, where I tell the story of the cast and the fans gelling and the story of ratings and how Community struggled with them. So the first thing I want to ask, I guess Matt in this case, would be, why did you start watching Community?
I saw how everybody in the media was freaking out about Modern Warfare. I saw basically everybody's like, this is the best episode anybody's seen and in quite a long time of television. That they were, the media was going nuts, and I went and found the episode and watched it, and I completely agreed with them. It was like, how is this only 22 minutes? This was incredibly well done. I don't know any of these people. I've got to get caught up. And I started watching with the season 2. As far as I remember, the season 2 Anthropology 101 is my first live episode, and I saw every one of them the day it dropped going forward. Usually live on DVR and Hulu the next day, and multiple times during the week leading up to the next one. So I was the other guy that helps with the community account, or the guy that has it, Mike, it started with a pilot. I envy him deeply, but for me, it was Modern Warfare.
And what was the Community fan base like at that point, if you remember at all?
Well, I was in the fan base, but once I got in, that's why I'm only on Twitter for Community. I mean, and not just because of the Community's account now, but my private account was only for the purpose of following people on Community. It was about the show, because Community was really smart about how to use Twitter when Twitter was really young. So the cast was active. They had fake accounts for the main cast members on the show. Even Leonard has his own Twitter account. It has tweets still. They never deleted it. There was an interaction they regularly did, and it was a great show for it. And they put things in the show so you'd have a reason to talk to people afterwards. Because of the layering, because of the ideas they put in it. So the fans, every time the episode ran Twitter, it trended. And because they were relentless, they knew it mattered. And the fans would tweet the sponsors during the episodes. They saw commercials like, thank you for supporting our show, because they found out that helps. Because ultimately these episodes had to be paid for. And what these companies that provide money and advertise with the show, they want to get feedback. So you reply to them, you include them in the tweet. They did it. The fans were active. I mean, it was really hard when we had the break during 3, but the fans were even more active then. I mean, really, the absence of the show actually activated them more. Leading up to moments activated them more. So there's nothing like them on Twitter. There was nothing like this group. I mean, there's some really good fan bases out there, but
Well, and anymore too, there's, like we've mentioned, there's a dozen different podcasts on Community. So that wasn't happening at the time, and it is now. So again, very easy to interact these days. We were all still in the formative phase. We were all letting the show bubble up and marinate before we could actually, take action like we have. But we were still there and watching.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there was LiveJournal was huge, not just Twitter. Tumblr was insanely busy with the references to Community, where not just fan fiction, but Tumblr was, if you wanted an image from the show, you found it on Tumblr. There was some Facebook going on at the time, but Twitter and Tumblr were the biggest places, but there were people constantly writing about the show beyond just the professional places. And it was a great way to interact with fans, because the fans would say something about the show, or they'd use the hashtag, whatever the hashtag was for the show at the time, and people would respond. And it wasn't just that they were clicking like, they were talking to you. So you had, on a regular basis, not just the cast, but you had other fans. They saw you, they hunted, looked for you, and they responded to you, and you knew how to be included. It was particularly because we knew we were getting the show wasn't popular. We knew we were in a group. We were in a select group, and we knew it the whole time. We just wanted more people in it to make it keep going. So it was really fun, but it was really exhausting because they wanted you to participate that way. They needed you to do that to help build up the numbers. They needed that help because we're trying to get noticed. And so those, particularly those that lived around New York and LA that did so much, I mean, they went out of their way and did a great job of keeping the show in people's, you couldn't talk on social media and mention community and not somebody just love on that. And it was fabulous.
And I think, Alex, at risk of taking the transition for you, but that's a perfect way to move into the conversation about Nielsen ratings, because in lieu of having effective ratings, that's exactly what the fan base had to do, Matt, what you've described here.
Yeah. You had to, I mean, Nielsen ratings decided a lot. And of course, they're going up against a juggernaut almost the entire time. They're going against Big Bang Theory. And Big Bang Theory was, if you look at what ratings were of other television shows, and you look at Big Bang Theory was an incredible outlier. It gets good ratings in repeats, like ridiculous good, high ratings in repeats. So it's this really freakish television show, and Community is a sacrificial lamb against it. And it was, we were aware of how it works. I was part of Nielsen at at least 2 times in my life in the past, short term, because they have, more permanent people and they have temporary. So they send you the stuff and you fill it out. I unfortunately never got to tell them all about Community, but the times that I've filled with it, you're just filling in a thing. You understand how these work. You get an idea of how the numbers work, and Community was never getting big numbers. But on social media, Community got bigger numbers than the rest of the shows. You can't, early was trending was incredibly easier. Twitter being bigger, it's a lot harder now, but you can get it to work. You could get people to see it. You could have a couple hundred dedicated people drive them up to the top of what was trending and get people to look at it. But, for a lot of people, the show wasn't accessible for some reason. And they're now just figuring it out when they're watching on Netflix. So it was brutal watching the Nielsen ratings, and you always knew it meant the show was in trouble. And for the fandom, it meant it was always really, really a lot of intense weight about that, because we cared about the show, and we couldn't figure out a way to get the numbers up.
Yeah, at what point did you start to worry about it because of ratings? Like, was it, because I could never really pin down a specific date, just like looking at Reddit and stuff, but was it like after season 1? Is it mid-season 2? Was it end of season 2?
Mid-season 3, when they took the winter break. The winter break freaked everybody out. Winter break scared the bejesus out of us, because we just watched Regional Holiday Musical, which was, it's an amazing episode. It is a funny episode. It does a lot of smart things. And episode drops, and then they're off the air. I mean, for the fandom, that was heartbreakingly scary, because usually when you get pulled mid-season, if you come back, you're still gone. Yeah, because look, the way these things work is, if they get a show in that spot and it outperforms what you were doing, you're not coming back. Unless they're going to burn off your episode somewhere, but you're really not coming back. And so I was watching Big Bang Theory after the break, because I could not, like everybody else, I could not afford my show not to come back. I didn't watch whatever they were filling in that spot. No, was not going to watch it. Didn't tweet about it, didn't ask about it, never searched for it. Nobody was going to know that I knew that show existed. I don't even remember what it was. So that's the scariest moment for the fandom. There's always this fear at the end of season 2, but the
Yeah.
paintball episodes were so well respected that, there wasn't a lot of talk about it. But in the middle of season 3, where they get pulled after easily a top 20 episode on anybody's list out of 110 episodes, it got pulled. And that was really, if you're looking for the scariest moment for the fandom, that was it.
So it's
That was the
interesting.
first big one.
Interesting that you mentioned that. I actually saw Joel McHale do stand up right around that time, and it was on a Thursday night. And during his set, he said, "Wait a minute, what are you guys all doing here?" Because we clapped. He said something about being on Community. He's like, "This is the time frame when the show is on. You guys need to leave my stand up and go watch the show. Like, you have to tune in so we don't get canceled." And obviously, I thought that was a hilarious joke, but also he might have been a little serious.
Yeah,
Oh, he was
I mean,
definitely serious.
they were always in. Look, everything against Big Bang Theory was getting chewed up. That they were doing a better job than other shows because it was a niche show, and that's probably the reason it stayed on as long as it did. But the ratings were brutal, and they got worse over time. The big thing that I don't think people understands about media, and this is my personal perspective, your ratings for the next week have a lot to do with how much they like the previous episode. So usually that was the big problem. So if the episode was just okay from the previous week, the next week, even if it was great, just didn't get watched like it could have been. So you lose people along the way when those things happen.
Well, if that's not a tease, then I don't know what is. That's going to do it for this episode of the Epilogue. Thank you to Adam and Matt for hanging out with me today. You can find links to their podcast and the community's Twitter account at bit.ly/thestoryofcommunity. Thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast, and I'll be back next week with our odd number episode podcaster group to talk about season 3 or episode 3, 2011. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you then.